Product provided by Nintendo, specifically Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. We have somebody online who has an opinion on, wait for it, gaming. As we all know, this is the worst thing you can possibly do, so we're going to react to somebody's tier list of Xenoblade Chronicles games. And my team's going to the Super Bowl, so I may be a little bit merciful today. Nah, no, I'm not. Hello, everybody. It's your boy, Jmulls, and let's get into this.
Welcome to NLA.
Welcome to the internet, a hellscape of pain and suffering. But we have this article from Nintendo Everything, ranking the Xenoblade Chronicles games from best to worst. And they actually go from worst to best, funnily enough, so yeah, you know, okay. Now, just as a reminder, we're gonna have some fun around here with this, but it is just someone's opinion online, right? Like, don't take it too seriously. But I have seen this ranking and I know I'm going to disagree heavily with it, and I want to go over why. So let's start with probably the one take here that I'm actually going to agree with, and that is putting Future Connected in the 7 spot. Now, why is this? I think just because mainly it's not as memorable as an experience compared to the other entries here. For me, though, this is still like an 8 out of 10 experience. I love Future Connected so much because I was dissatisfied with the ending of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 because of the lack of Melia. Yeah, there was some resolution there. I just wanted way more, and Future Connected is basically everything I wanted for her, or at least mostly what I wanted for her. I like palling around with Riki's kids. They were fun. I like the Pawn Specters. They talk about the combat lacking chain attacks, unlike the base game. I don't really view that as a weakness because, like they note here, it is a shorter game, and I think the Pawn Spectre mechanic works in a bite-sized experience. Maybe not bite-sized, but in a shorter experience like Future Connected. I do agree that the villains are pretty weak compared to Xenoblade standards, but I still think overall I very much enjoy Future Connected.
New LA is our beautiful lie to ourselves.
This is where we start to heavily disagree. Let's say our paths diverge like the end of a Fast and Furious movie. Putting Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition in the 6th spot. I fundamentally disagree. I put this in my number 1. So let's go over why they're wrong. Fantastic in-depth remaster of the original game. True. Huge number of quality of life changes. True. That said, the game is much different than any of the numbered Xenoblade Chronicles titles. Whereas those titles are story-driven, that's not the case at all for Xenoblade Chronicles X. I fundamentally disagree with this, to the point where I would just argue that it's wrong. And I get the intention of what they're trying to say and the spirit of the argument. It's just the way they have phrased it here is incorrect. Xenoblade Chronicles 1, 2, and 3 are far more cinematic. They're focused on telling a pretty linear story that is very much told through a series of cutscenes. It's a far more cinematic experience. The story in Xenoblade Chronicles X, I would argue, isn't lesser. It's just a different kind of story because it's a video game, and video games can tell a breadth, a variety of different kinds of stories. Xenoblade Chronicles X focuses far more. Instead of telling a narrative that is far more linear with cutscenes, it does have cutscenes, but it's more focused on telling the story of the world and the people of New LA, having you go out into the world and explore and uncover this weird alien world for yourself at your own pace, and in the order that, well, you experience it in, because you choose to go over there, and unravel that corner of mirror at your own pace, all the while choosing to do what you want to do. I don't view that to be a lesser experience. I view it to be a different one. You'll get some cutscenes now and then, but for the most part, you'll be completing side quests and basic missions. Yes, because that's kind of the point of the story of Xenoblade X. It is telling the story of Mira. It's telling the story of this ragtag band of survivors for humanity through largely the side content. That doesn't mean it's not as story-driven as 1, 2, and 3. Xenoblade X is focused on exploration, true, and has an absolutely massive open world to explore on the planet Mira. The occasional lack of direction is a definite negative, plus the fact that many early quests are littered with extremely high-leveled monsters that will squash you in an instant. So this is incorrect. I don't know what they mean by lack of direction. The game just tells you what you have to do. Like, legitimately, it just tells you what you have to do. If you want to go do the main quest, it tells you exactly what prereqs you need to accomplish in order to go and actually do the main quest. Also, for an open world game, I would argue a lack of direction isn't even a negative. It's incentivizing exploring the open world, which you can do, but the game always gives you a direction. Side quests will tell you what you need to do. You have a map. Like, what are we arguing here? Like, do you have a problem trying to find the next, like, main story mission on the map and you just, like, have an issue with that? Is that the root of the problem here? Or is it like, oh, I need certain types of monster drops in order to get this weapon or this piece of armor or whatever, and I don't know where to go for that. And like, yeah, the UI can be a little bit clunky with that, but is the underlying argument trying to be made here that, oh, it doesn't tell me specifically where all the mobs I need to go kill are? Like, is that the problem here? Like, I don't view Xenoblade Chronicles X to have a lack of direction, at least in a meaningful way. I view it to be open-ended enough to incentivize going off the beaten path and doing some side content. That is a positive for me. I wouldn't call it a definite negative. Plus the fact that many early quests are littered with extremely high-leveled monsters. It's like the other Xenoblade games had this as well. It's like, yeah, X is probably the one where it's like the most in your face, but like even then, again, I don't view this to be a problem. It's part of a living, breathing world. There are monsters that are weak and there are monsters that are very strong. And if you want to live, avoid the ones that are really strong. It's a natural obstacle in the open world for you to find a way to maneuver around and navigate around. That's not a con in my opinion. That's just interesting open world game design, especially since one of the biggest problems I'm going to have with a lot of RPGs is like scaling the world difficulty, because when you continue to scale the world where it's like, oh, you can go to this zone with a bunch of level 5 mobs and this one with a bunch of level 10 mobs, you're not getting an interesting power progression there because everything relatively feels about the same. But in X now, it's like, oh, early game, I have to avoid these certain monsters. They're blocking my path. I have to find a new way to go around this situation. I have to stop for 2 seconds and think about what's going on here. But later down the line, when I'm more powerful, maybe when I have a skill, for instance, I can come back there and say, you know what? These things that used to be a natural roadblock for me no longer are. To me, I view that as a great way to reinforce the progression systems that are there in Xenoblade Chronicles X as an RPG. Moreover, many players love Xenoblade for its stories, and X's plot is definitely the weakest in the whole franchise other than Future Connected. Again, I disagree. I don't view the plot to be weak. It's just told differently to 1, 2, and 3. That doesn't make it lesser or greater. It just makes it different. And especially since we're considering to be Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, we're counting chapter 13 here. There's a ton of stuff that happens in the story that is interesting, that is engaging. Like, legitimately, I will take, this might be a bit of a hot take. Personally, I'll take the cast of characters and the plot of Xenoblade X over Blade 1 and 3. I just simply prefer them. I think the problem a lot of people have when it comes to Xenoblade X is you either just hyperfixate on doing the chapter stories and you ignore the world and the stories that are told there that flesh out the cast of characters, all the heart-to-hearts, the affinity missions, all the various side quests developing the various alien races and their connections to humanity. You go into it with this preconceived conception that Xenoblade X is supposed to be a spin-off or just some kind of lesser spin-off entry compared to Blade 1, 2, and 3, and you put yourself in a mind space to where you're not going to properly give the respect that X's story actually brings to the table. And you're going into it with this preconception that X is supposed to be lesser or not taken as seriously as Blade 1, 2, and 3. And that can color your, well, biases when you're experiencing X. Xenoblade X is a mainline entry for Xenoblade. It's just as important to the overall narrative as 1, 2, and 3. It's basically the glue that binds everything together. And for me personally, I have X as my favorite game. I would put X in the 1 spot personally. And the game I would put in the 2 spot, funnily enough, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Many players would rank Xenoblade Chronicles 2 at the very top of their list, and that's completely understandable. I put it at the 2 spot. I only put it below X. Xenoblade 2's story starts out slow. Like honestly, not really. I wouldn't really argue that all that much. You have the entire bit with Elysium and Pyra right off the start. Then you have all the world building that's going on in like Gormont. It's like, sure, you can maybe argue it, but I wouldn't call that a bad thing. But when it gets going, it really gets going. That I agree with. By the end of the game, you've got an absolutely fantastic story full of great characters and character moments, absolutely based. The combat is tough to understand without YouTube guides. Yeah, which is a definite failing of the game's tutorial system. I'd argue this is kind of the case with all the Xenoblade games, and a lot of people will think they're good at a Xenoblade game until you actually watch someone that's actually good at a Xenoblade game that knows what they're doing, and you realize you don't really understand all the systems that are going on. This is a failing with a lot of Monolith's games that I have. The in-game tutorials across the board are largely bad. Saga 3 is pretty good for this, actually. But when you get a handle on how it works, battling powerful opponents becomes incredibly satisfying. True, I entirely agree with this. I love the combat in Xenoblade 2. There's a huge amount of side content, plenty of DLC, difficulty options, some of the best music in all of gaming. Yeah, I think the difficulty options in Xenoblade 2, by far and away the best in the entire franchise. I love Bringer of Chaos. I love having the custom difficulty. It's really good. However, it was also Monolith Soft's first Nintendo Switch game. As a result, it's extremely blurry and low quality on handheld. Yeah, okay, sure, fair. and the performance occasionally chugs as well. You know what? I'm not mad at this. I am someone that does care about frame rate and performance, and yeah, I wouldn't argue the other Xenoblade games are necessarily good at this, but I do think 2 can kind of suffer more than the others, especially on the original Switch. On the Switch 2, it's a bit better. That being said, Nintendo Switch 2 remake of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 would absolutely shoot up to the very top of the list. Okay, slightly enhanced graphics, a big resolution boost, and a frame rate increase would all make this game much more playable. Entirely agree with this. I would love a Switch 2 version. And while we're at it, why not remove or rework field skills? Okay, they're cooking with this. Legitimately. I would probably argue don't completely remove this system, rework it entirely. That I agree with. Some players also took issue with the Merc missions. Yeah, these suck. The lack of proper tutorials, yep, and the Blade Gacha system, I agree. But all of these could easily be adjusted or reworked for a remake. Okay, I like how this is basically an advertisement for a potential Switch 2 version, or like a plea to Nintendo to actually make it. I agree with this. I do think a Switch 2 version of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 could address a lot of the faults Blade 2 has, because for me, right, I've always had Xenoblade 2 near the top of my list. It's always, well, mostly been in like my top 5 games of all time. Currently, it's my number 3 spot. I love this game to death, but it has massive pros and very, very deep cons. It's just, for me, the pros outweigh the cons. But a remake of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that could potentially like sand down those flaws and just smooth it out across the board, cinema, that would be perfection. But imagine a full remake that also includes a post-game story kind of like Future Connected. I really don't think Blade 2 needs this. I see this take a lot. I just really do not believe Xenoblade 2 necessarily needs this. Like, would it be cool to see the crew again? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm personally of the opinion I just want to see a continuation of the overall franchise story more than anything. And if we're going to get something new with the remake, I would love it to be like Metsu Blade, where it's like a non-canonical new game plus playthrough that just swaps Pyra, Mithra, and Malos. So Rex goes on like a bro adventure with Malos. That'd be awesome. I would love that. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a great game. It has the potential to be the best game in the series. It just needs a little touch up to give it that last push. Fair. I can't understate here, by the way, Future Connected and Xenoblade Chronicles X are, in my opinion, the only games in the franchise that falter a bit. Entirely disagree. I put X in the 1 spot. In terms of being a video game, I don't think any of the other Xenoblade games do it better than X. Then we get Torna. This is egregious to me. I would not put Torna over 2. It's like, I get it. Torna is a very tight experience. I think the combat in the base game of Xenoblade 2 is better than Torna. It's like, in Torna, it's good, don't get me wrong, and I think it does kind of suit a shorter experience. It's just, overall, I view the combat in Blade 2 to be more satisfying, to also offer more depth, and in a combat system like Xenoblade 2, I think having more depth lends itself to that kind of combat system. But also, I have one massive crippling flaw for Torna that is not here in Xenoblade 2, and this is the community rank. In order to beat the game for Torna, you need to get community rank 4. It involves doing a bunch of side quests. I think the side quests in Torna are really good, but when I'm going back to do a repeat playthrough of Torna, I don't want to do all that, but I have to. And it's something that really kills some motivation that I have to go back and replay Torna. I still have done it before, but it's always been this thing where I'm like, oh god, I have to do all these quests again, don't I? But like, let's be fair here. Yeah, the ending's amazing. The ending to Torna, the Golden Country, is one of the best things I've ever seen. It's incredible. Torna is one of the best examples of doing a prequel, which I ordinarily don't actually like. I'm not that big of a fan of prequels because I care more about what happens after the fact. But Torna does it right, in my opinion. And it recontextualizes so much from the base game. Torna's just awesome. I just wouldn't put it over 2. I think this is actually, for me, like a pro here. And I think they like intend for this to be a pro as well, because it's meant to be almost bittersweet. As usual, the characters here are excellent and you grow to like them very quickly, which is a shame because if you played the base game first, you know what happens to them in the end. Yeah, it's a tragedy. And it makes all those very sweet moments that happen between the characters in Torna just hurt all the more because you know the ending. This is like, again, no hate or anything. It's like everybody just has their own opinion about things. Entirely fine, right? But this is a take that I see around a lot on the internet, and I fundamentally disagree with it. A definite must play for fans of the series, but not an essential one. Most of the events that happen in the DLC are covered in short form in the base game, so if you skip it, you won't be missing too much in terms of story. I disagree with this line of thinking overall. There is like this way of thinking that I've noticed in the last few years, and it's always been there to some degree. I just really have noticed in the last few years where a lot of story analysis and critique about a story, whether it be like a video game or an anime or a movie or whatever, is focused more so so on the progression of plot points and how characters actually feel. But Torna is so important for the character of Jin. It's important for the character of Mithra to not only give you context for things that happen, but validate how those characters act and feel in the base game. That to me is very important. And just because there's not like some grandiose plot point that you will miss that won't make the series coherent going forward if you miss out on it, I don't view that to make it lesser or not as important as something else. It's a bunch of really needed, maybe not necessarily like a load-bearing wall or anything, but it's like these kinds of character moments, in my opinion, are so important to make you actually care about a cast of characters, not just in the short term, but in the long term, when you go back and think about this game like years down the line after you've beaten it and go, you know what, that was a really great experience. I love those characters. I miss those characters. Again, everyone's entitled to the way they think and what their own preferences are. Absolutely. It's just, I see this kind of argument around the internet a lot, and I just fundamentally disagree with it.
Welcome to NLA.
Okay, so I feel like I've made a lot of my points for 2 and X, so they put Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition at the 3 spot. I do agree there's a lot to Xenoblade 1 that I absolutely love. Personally, I put the cast of characters probably at the bottom for the mainline games. For Blade 1, the cast is very top-heavy for me. I love Shulk, I love Fiora, and I love Melia as a character. The others are good, don't get me wrong, I just don't love them as much comparatively to the other characters in like Blade 2, 3, and also X. I agree entirely with them though. Blade 1 is the place to start the series. If you're just getting into Xenoblade and you're like, what game should I play? There's a bunch of games here. Just go with 1, then go to 2, then 3, then do X Definitive Edition. That's the order I recommend. I think Xenoblade 1 is my favorite zone design in all of the Xenoblade games. I love things like Sotol Marsh at night, Aerith Sea day and night, Valak Mountains gorgeous. I mean, all of Mechonis really, right? It's like Xenoblade 1 is such a pretty game. Like, God, playing. I mean, come on, dude. And the music in Xenoblade 1 and the zone themes, like, oh my God, it's so good. It's just, for me, the characters, the story, and the gameplay for the other games just kind of grabbed me more than Blade 1, though I do have it extremely close with Blade 3. And for me, it's like my opinion on which I prefer, Blade 1 or Blade 3, really kind of depends on the day and what I'm feeling that given day. And they put Blade 3 in the number 2 spot. Again, really good game. And I think chapters 1 to like through the Eclipse bit is one of my favorite sections of any game ever. The tone is immaculate, the dialogue is great, the characters are incredible, the world is engaging and so interesting. And like, come on, the Eclipse scene, like, it's legendary for a great reason, right? And some people will kind of put down the soundtrack in Blade 3. I love it personally. There's a few songs that might be a bit more underutilized, let's say, but I still really enjoy the soundtrack here as well. I think the gameplay is relatively interesting. I definitely prefer the gameplay in Blade 2 and also X, but there's a few things in this game that really hold it back for me that I can't really get around. For me, when it comes to the combat, I do very much enjoy it. I think the chain attack system in Blade 3 is really fun, don't get me wrong. However, I prefer the flow of Blade 2's combat system to where outside of the chain attack, you're like building up a bunch of elemental orbs that you can then spend and utilize in the chain attack system. I really like that natural flow and cadence of the combat system, and I feel like the chain attack system in Blade 3 is a bit more disruptive and kind of separate, mechanically speaking, compared to the rest of the gameplay. Some people won't mind that whatsoever, but there's something to bear in mind when I'm talking about all of this. It's like, again, my least favorite Xenoblade experience is still like an 8 out of 10. And when we're talking about any of the mainline games, these are all like 9.9 or 10 out of 10 games for me. I love them so much, I have to nitpick to put one over the other. Like, my least favorite Xenoblade experience is something that I'll still take over like the rest of the industry, at least 99.8% of the industry. I love Xenoblade overall, but like that's the main reason that hold Blade 3's combat back a bit for me. Also, I get what they were doing with the visual of the Orion Titan and the Mechonis sword being visually there for pretty much the entire like open world. I do think that kind of makes the open world of Blade 3 a bit less memorable visually to me compared to say Blade 1, 2, and X. That's another thing that kind of holds it back a bit for me. And the most glaring issue that I have, I really wish the Eclipse scene was the halfway point for the main story and not like the 80% point. The pacing of chapters 6 and 7 for me really holds the overall story back. And I get what they're trying to do there because it's kind of similar to X in a way, to where I feel as if they intend for you to do a bunch of side content to expand that experience, to kind of almost make that Eclipse scene feel like it's the halfway point because you do so much side content after that point. It's just, I think that style of storytelling works way better in the type of game that X is compared to 3. And when I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I couldn't really get past the fact that a lot of the game just felt like them doing what X already did, but in a lesser way. Nothing's necessarily one for one, but a lot of the overall vibes and the ways they want you to engage with the open world, if you even want to call it an open world, I would. But for the sake of argument, let's call them zones, feels very reminiscent to the way you explore Xenoblade X. I have other smaller issues with Blade 3, like the appearance system being not as customizable as like X and 1. This is one of my bigger problems with Blade 2 as well, by the way. I don't like the fact that the appearances are like locked to actual stat bonuses or anything like that. I vastly prefer the appearance system in Blade 1 and X. But it's like the pace in the main story for chapters 6 and 7 compared to chapters 1 through 5 kind of lets it down for me compared to the rest of the games. And that's why I put it kind of on equal standing with 1 for me, where it really depends on the day because they have their own pros and cons and they specialize in their own things. But the things they do specialize in, they do them very well. This I do disagree with, not just because I put X as my number 1 and Blade as my number 2. I disagree with the idea that Future Redeemed is better than the base game. Don't get me wrong here. I think Future Redeemed is an awesome experience. I love it. It's amazing. It's kind of the problem that I had with it when they first announced it. I did not need a prequel for Xenoblade 3. When I beat Xenoblade 3, I want to know what happens next after Xenoblade 3. I didn't need more story in Ionias. That's a deeply personal thing, but again, we're talking about personal preference here, right? Like, that's just the entire point of the video. But like, man, dude, it was so much fun seeing Shulk and Rex again, and seeing Glimmer and Nickel and how like some of those family dynamics happen. Matthew's a great character. He's a barrel of laughs. I love A as a character. I kind of hope we see her again. And mechanically, I love Future Redeemed. Don't get me wrong. There's a part of me that might even prefer it mechanically, gameplay-wise, compared to the base game. But also, when it comes to the open world, remember what I said earlier about Xenoblade 3, where it feels like they took half of the gameplay formula and identity for Blade X, put half of it in the base game for Xenoblade 3 and the other half in Future Redeemed? Well, the collectathon elements of X really feel apparent in Future Redeemed, and I love them here. I love the Collectopedia. I love the Enemypedia, by the way. And just scouring all those zones to get 100% for the zone, getting all the different enemies, all the different pieces of like, well, gear and loot and items you can just scrounge up. It's so good. I love that. And let's be fair, dude. The ending for Future Redeemed, the post-credit scene, blows me away. What a great post-credit scene. I love Future Awaits. It's one of my favorite songs ever. And that entire final battle against Alpha, my god, it's just cinema. It's so good. It's fan service, but I don't ever have a problem with fan service because that's kind of what Future Redeemed should have been, a massive bit of fan service, and that's what it was. It was cool. It was awesome seeing all these characters back again. Giga Chad Rex, like the Chadosaurus himself, love him. He was so fun. I'll show him a thing of 3. Great. The ending annoys me a little bit because like if you go back to the Founder's Room, when Matthew leaves, he just never comes back to the city. And I never really got the explanation for that. Like, why not go back and meet up with them on occasion? Dude just left, and then the city just never really heard from him again until his like descendants came. It's like you spend the entire game trying to get Niall back to basically just leave in the post-credit scene. And like maybe the implication there is that the statue didn't like account for like any potential visit he had, but like that part always just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It doesn't ruin the experience or anything, but again, going back to what I was just talking about before Xenoblade 3, when we're ranking these things that I hold in the highest of regards, I have to kind of nitpick here, and this is one of the things that would hold Future Redeemed back a bit for me. But again, I don't view any of the DLC to be better than the base games. So I wouldn't put Future Redeemed in the 1 spot because I wouldn't put it above 3 to begin with, but I don't put 3 in the 1 spot either. But I would say Future Redeemed is absolutely awesome. Just play Xenoblade. These games are awesome. Comes with a 40-hour love letter to Xenoblade. That's exactly what Future Redeemed is. While beautifully wrapping up the story of the trilogy, yes. It's like, I agree with the way this is put. It's just sometimes I see people try to argue this is the end of the overall story for Xenoblade, and it kind of isn't. But yes, they are right here. It's a beautiful wrap up for the trilogy. It's just, I no longer consider Xenoblade to be a trilogy. Some players feel like the ending and villains of the base game were a bit weak. I disagree with that, but well, Zed's a little bit weak, but still, he's like fine enough. Future Redeemed fills in all those gaps and creates one of the greatest stories in JRPG history. I mean, it's glaze, but I'm not upset at it. It's extremely important that Future Redeemed is the last game you play in the Xenoblade saga. Entirely disagree, you play X after it. It contains major spoilers for the first 3 games, so you'll be very confused if this is the first one you play. Yeah, it's like the way with the wording here. Again, it's minimizing Xenoblade Chronicles X when it is a mainline entry. Xenoblade Chronicles now, I would no longer view to be a trilogy. Xenoblade X is just as important story-wise. It is a mainline entry. It's not a spin-off. It's not some side game. The original used to be perceived that way, but Definitive Edition solidified it as a mainline entry. So yeah, it's like, fair to say I heavily disagree with the overall ranking. I'm just kind of glad we're getting some recognition for Xenoblade and we're talking about Xenoblade because I love these games. My list is very different, but that's kind of the beautiful thing about stories, isn't it? We can all experience these things and based on our own personal life experiences and our own preferences, walk away with wildly different experiences. And I think that's a beautiful thing about gaming. And I think it also goes to show just how great Xenoblade is overall, because all these games kind of target different things and almost specialize in their own thing, not necessarily in terms of gameplay, but also in terms of like tone, atmosphere, and the type of story and message that they're trying to give out. And I think depending upon who you are as a person, like where you are in life and where you were when you first played each of these games, that can definitely color your perspective, right? Look, we like to have fun around here, like to have a bit of a yap sesh about Xenoblade, but at the end of the day, just glad people play Xenoblade.
Welcome to NLA.
And now here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your own ranking. Do you agree with Nintendo everything? Link in the description down below. Are you more inclined to agree with me because I have a YouTube channel and that must mean I'm correct about everything? Naturally, right? Or do you have your own ranking? Leave in the comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. But also, what I want you to do is leave your favorite moment or memory with Xenoblade or Xenosaga or Xenogears. I'd love to hear your stories as well. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And you guys may not know this about me, but I love World of Warcraft. So if you want to hear me yap about more things, well, may I recommend this video on WoW Housing's Endeavor system. Yeah, I had fun with the thumbnail for that one. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!